Hi, welcome back to Denelli Chic Handmade. This is Eliana, and I wanted to show you what we're going to be working on next. This is going to be a keyhole scarf made on the Addi Express. What I really love about this is that it's so easy to do, and all you need to do is know a little bit of crochet when we start working on it. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. So using a 22-pin Addi knitting machine or Sentro knitting machine, I'm going to go ahead and add some waste yarn. Now what waste yarn is a contrasting color to the main color you're going to be using. So since I'm using a teal color, I'm going to go ahead and use red as my contrasting waste yarn. I'm going to turn my handle and find the first black hook. I'm going to put my contrasting waste yarn here behind the black hook. And now start to feed this through every other hook. So I'm putting the yarn underneath every other hook. Just kind of zigzagging along. I'm going to open up my yarn guide, place the yarn in, pull down on the red yarn that you have here so it doesn't pop up. Take a quick look around to make sure everything is evenly spaced out with your yarn. And then go ahead and cast on 5 rows of waste yarn. And this is my one more row. This will be my last row here. Open up the yarn guide, take my waste yarn and just drop it in the middle, right before the black hook. I'm going to take my main color. The main color I'm using today is going to be, it's Hobby Lobby. I love this yarn. The color is teal tweed. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and take my main color, put it inside the yarn guide around the black hook here, close my yarn guide, put my counter on 0, and I'm going to crank. Just going to keep watching this for a couple of rows and make sure that none of the stitches come up. Sometimes it will do that, especially in the beginning. And I'm going to proceed making 2 tubes with waste yarn in the beginning and the end of both tubes. Each of the tubes will be 175 rows. So I'll meet you at the end of this tube to show you how to add the waste yarn. But we're going to repeat this twice, so altogether we will have 2 tubes of 175 rows with waste yarn on each end. I'll meet you when I get closer to the end. I've done 175 rows of the main color. I'm going to go ahead and cut my yarn, place the yarn on the other side, on the inside. And now I'm going to do about 7 rows of contrasting waste yarn at the end. Again, I'm going to keep an eye on it, make sure none of the stitches come up. We don't want anything unraveling at this point. I'm going to keep turning. Let's see how much I have left. Waste yarn, a couple more rows. I like to do a little extra waste yarn on the opposite end just because it can easily unravel because nothing's really holding it down. And we're almost there. Got one more. There we go, right here, which is fine. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and slowly, I'm gonna hold on to my yarn underneath and slowly turn this so that the stitches naturally fall off. You can see them all coming out. Make sure I don't pull anything here because again, this end can easily unravel. So I'm going to gently. So now I have one tube done. It has both ends have the waste yarn. And here's my tube of 175 rows. I'm going to go ahead and repeat that for a second tube, and I'll meet you when I complete the second tube. Now that I have my 4 tubes, I'm going to go ahead and close up the one end and remove the waste yarn. So what you're going to do is, where you see the red coming out, so you'll pull up this stitch, and when you pull on the green one where that's coming out of, and you just kind of follow it up, you'll pick up a stitch here, and you'll pick up the stitch here. Whoops. Oh, it wants to, there. And all we'll do is we'll bring through the loop. Then we'll go to this side here, bring up a loop, go to the opposite side, bring up a loop. And what we're doing is we are slip stitching the ends closed. Bring up a loop. Here I'm bringing up a loop. Opposite side, bringing up a loop. And bringing up a loop here. Again, opposite side, zigzagging back and forth so that we can close up the end so it's nice and smooth. And here. And here on this side. There are other ways to close these. You could add some yarn the same color and just kind of single crochet across. Pull up a loop. Same thing here. Here. And I'm almost to the end. And on this side. And over here, and this is why it's good to have the waist yarn, because it kind of frames that last row for you so you can easily pick up the stitch. Okay, so now just to keep this secure, I'm going to use a stitch marker. And you can see now I have closed up the end. And then I can just pull my waist yarn out, because this is the side where it easily comes out. And you know, during the videos, I always have to have one that gives me a hard time. So this one looks like it's going to give me a hard time. So I may end up just cutting it. Just cut. There. When all else fails, just cut it out. Okay, let's see. There. So this is what we're going to do on the remaining ends. I'm going to close up the end and remove the waist yarn. So we'll meet at the next step. Now that I have the tubes, I have the ends sewn together, and I remove the waist yarn. Now we're going to work on joining them together. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that this is really flat, nice and flat. And what you're going to do then is you're going to, let's flip this over. Put 2 ends together, and you want to make sure that, try to keep this so you can see it. Where you see here, the stitches, the lined up stitch, you want to make sure that that's going to be lined up all the way down. So you're lining up the rows of the sides. Now they may twist a little bit as you're going, but just always make sure you're working on the same row all the way down. Let me grab my hook. And as you can see, we're lined up here. I'm going to grab this stitch here, and I'm going to grab the opposite stitch and pull a loop through. Then I'm going to come over here to the other side, pull through the stitch, pull it through. Come on this side and pull it through. I'm going to keep repeating this all the way down, zigzagging back and forth. And I'm just picking up the same stitch in the same row as I move up along it. So I hope you guys can see this. So get a little bit closer to the camera. And that's my little puppy. His name is Barry. And he's a really cute guy. So then I'm just going to continue on. I'm going to do this all the way down. Actually, I'm going to stop a little short. Let me get the measurements of where to stop. Now, to determine where the opening is going to be for the keyhole, I'm going to go ahead and measure about 9 inches from the end, which will put me about here. So I'm going to take a stitch marker. And by the way, I love these stitch markers. If you have them, this is a great time to use them. Or if you need to get some, I have them in the comments below. And this section here, the opening will be about 3 inches, which will be here. Go ahead and mark it right there. So I don't have to worry about this later. So I'm going to go back to doing my stitches. And again, let me get really close to the camera so you can see, because I know this yarn's kind of dark. I'm picking up a stitch here, pulling it through on the opposite end, and I'm pulling it through. Again here, pulling it through, opposite end, pulling it through. They're just slip stitches all the way down, and just make sure you stay in the same row. And if you want to see how it looks so far, this is really similar to how I make the hat using the Addi Express. And I'm going to continue on all the way down to my first stitch marker. When I get to the next stitch marker, I'll show you what we do next. Okay, thank you. I now made it to the point of the first stitch marker. And I'm just going to continue and do a couple more stitches. And that's it. So what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to pull this a little bit so I get a little bit of a string to work with. I'm going to cut this. I know it's kind of scary. I'm going to cut it. And then I'm going to weave this through. I'm going to push this through here. And I'm just going to tie a little knot. I'm going to do a knot. It's a single knot and then a surgeon's knot, which is just putting in it twice. Then later on, I'll just tuck it in between, and I can take the stitch marker out. Now I'm going to jump ahead. This is the opening for the keyhole. I'm going to jump ahead to my next set of stitches, which is about here. Make sure that I land in the right row, which will be this here so it's not in my way. And it's going to be right here and then right here. I'm going to pick up this stitch, pick up the opposite stitch, then continue on to the end, doing the same thing we did in the beginning, all the way down. Now that I'm at the end of the joining of the 2 scarves, you can see I'm on my very last stitch here. Oops. Very last stitch. And since I have a stitch marker here, I'm going to just use this to hang on to this other end. So I'm going to, and we'll show you what we do with that later. I'm going to put a stitch marker here to keep it together. So now let's take a look and see how this looks. So here's our scarf, and this is actually another way to do a regular size scarf. Now just to give you a gauge of measurements, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to measure the scarf to see where we're at. The scarf right now measures, let's see, the full length is about 37 inches, and it's 6.5 inches wide. So you can see if you wanted to make a full length scarf, you could easily do that with the Addi Express. Now, to finish off the scarf, and it's almost done, I'm going to add a complementary trim to it, which is similar to the scarf that I made here. This will be a simple chain 3 and a single crochet along the end. So now I'm gonna work on the trim, the edging here. I'm gonna use some black. Again, this is the Hobby Lobby. I love this yarn. And I think I actually really do love this yarn. Okay. I'm just gonna, where I have the stitch marker, remove the stitch marker, put my hook through here, and push it through. And I'm gonna bring my stitch through and also through the loop. It's a little bit tricky here, hard to see. There. I'm gonna do a single crochet. Oops. I'm gonna do a chain 1, and then I'm gonna do a single crochet in the loop here. I'm gonna chain 3. I'm going to skip 3 rows, 1, 2, 3, and I'm going to slip stitch. I'm going to chain 3, skip 3 rows, and I'm going to do a slip stitch or a single crochet. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and just put this here, a single crochet. Chain 3. This in here like this, single crochet, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, chain 3, 1, 2, and put a single crochet here. As you can see, I have 6 chain 3s, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Now I'm in the middle section, where I have my stitch marker, and it's holding 2 loops together. I'm going to remove the stitch marker. I'm just going to push this loop through. So I only have 1 loop on my hook. To remove that, pick up the black, do a chain 3, pick up this loop. Actually, no, I'm going to push this loop into the back, and then I'm going to push my needle through and pick up the yarn from the opposite side where the loop is. And it's a little bit tricky there. It just makes it a little bit neater doing it that way. And then I'm going to do chain 3, 1, 2, 3, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and I'm doing a single crochet. Chain 3, push this through, chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Let's see how many I have. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and just push my yarn through here, or my needle through here. And there's the edge. Now, I'm going to repeat this on the opposite side, and I'll show you what it looks like at the end. I've completed the edging on both sides of the scarf, both ends of the scarf. I tucked in all my threads, and now you can see that the keyhole scarf is completed. It looks really lovely, and this is in the teal. By the way, the color that I used for the other scarf, which was pictured in the beginning of the video, which is the scarf here. This scarf is also, this color is also, I love this yarn. The color of this one, I think, which is really cute, is it's called Cobblestone, and it's Hobby Lobby's I Love This Yarn. So there you have it. This is the end of the video for your keyhole scarf. I want to say thanks again to everyone for following me on Facebook and also subscribing to my YouTube channel. I have several other ideas and projects queued up in the next several weeks. I really appreciate your support. Thanks again for everything, and you guys have a wonderful day. Thank you.